So let's talk about fast lookup and record lookup elements in flow. So basically, fast lookup, what it means is it is going to look up for the record which you want and store it in a variable of type as object or as object collection variable. Okay, so you don't need to create different variables to store different fields of that record. For example, in our case, as we drew on the whiteboard, that we needed account ID from the opportunity, right? So here we are looking up opportunity, first of all, that meets our criteria. What is that criteria? That is, ID of that opportunity should be equal to the ID which is passed from the flow. And this ID is just a simple variable. So you can go ahead and create new variable of type text because ID is considered as a type text. And then you can say something which is more makes sense to you in the naming convention. You can say OPPTY ID because it's your opportunity ID, and then you can make it input and output, and that's it. So once you are passing from the process builder the ID, it will take it. Okay, so we are saying ID should be equal to that, and then the variable is, it can be a subject variable or a subject collection variable. Those are the only two options you can pick from. You cannot choose a variable type of let's say a text variable. You can't have that because it should be stored in an object type variable. So if you see here, you'll only get two options. So a subject variable could be opportunity O opti. That's what I named it because I want to say O means object of OPPTY. So if you follow name convention, it becomes a lot easier. So you can say OPPTY opportunity and input and output, and obviously it's going to be opportunity type of a subject variable. Okay, let's say sometimes you might want to pull contacts, right, of a certain account. So maybe you might have a contact that meets a criteria of some account ID, and then you want to pull all the contacts with that account ID. So it could be more than one because account to contact, we all know, is a master detail, or one-to-many relation. So you will pick here an as object collection variable because you know that you are expecting a list of elements, right? Let me show you to give you more clarity on how this is done. I'm going to switch to my developer console, and I have some Apex code here. And for those who don't code, there's nothing to get scared about. These are just some SQL queries. I just want to show you how to visualize it. So basically, the first step, OPPTY, that's our object. Imagine this is our S object variable, and we are saying select ID, account ID, because we always have to select ID in SQL. Account ID from opportunity, where ID equal to, this is this ID right here, OPPTY ID. That's text type or string type variable, and we're saying limit 1 because that's only one we want, right? And there's one extra step here because I cannot directly say OPPTY.account ID here, or maybe I can. So I'm just, to make it clear, I'm saying OPPTY.account ID because that's for the next step. So I'm going one step ahead. So this all here, just one line, that's this part. We are just taking the ID, assigning it to OPPTY object type, and these are the fields we want. So we are selecting those fields, just like here I only selected account ID. If I want, I can put close date, price book ID, anything I want basically. So alright, so I hope that is clear how is fast lookup is used. If we go to the palette and see the record lookup, let's just look at it. I'm not going to use it for today, but I'm going to show you what's the difference. So we can name it anything you like. Maybe you want to bring an opportunity type. Okay, and first step is same. You always need to select the criteria. Okay, so ID equals I'm gonna say same OPPTY TYID. The first step remains the same, and the second step, instead of and then I'm going to say I want account ID from the opportunity, and I'm going to assign it to a variable that will be a text type of variable. So it has to be, can be a text, because account ID is a text type. If it was let's say close date, right, then we choose date field. If it is an amount, we choose number, currency field, and so on. So we can create this variable here and then assign that. So what it will do is it will pull that value of that account ID and it will assign to that variable which you create here, and that will be assigned in the flow. Now, as you can see here, in my use case, in my current tutorial, this use case, I can very easily use record lookup here. I don't need to use a fast lookup, but the reason I'm doing this is because it's a lot faster than having to create all variable. Let's say in future, I might want a close date also, or close date already there. Let's say amount. I want an amount. I can just add a row here, and that will take care of it. Whereas if I'm using record create element, I'll have to create a variable and then assign it to there and access it from there. So just it is just that difference, okay? So most of the time you'll be dealing with fast lookup in most of the scenarios. So okay, I think that was enough explanation on fast lookup. And then next one, we want to go back and we want to get the account fields. So we create another fast lookup for account fields. It basically follows the same scenario. So we're saying get account fields ID equals. So see this very carefully. If it was a record lookup element, we would just take that variable we just created, okay? But here, since we created OOPPTY object type, we are able to use this dot notations. So we can only use such notations if we are using a fast lookup and a subject variable type. So OOPPTY is an subject variable dot account ID. Okay, so ID equals account OOPPTY dot account ID. That is pretty clear, because if I go to my SOQL, here, if you want to get account fields, we're just gonna say billing city, name, ID, billing state from account where ID equal to OOPPTY dot account ID. It's exactly the same thing, but it is in a flow. You don't need to code it, you just pick it from there. So if you just start typing account ID here, let me try doing that. Account ID. It's going to show you. We know we need this one, OOPPTY dot account, and if you select this, it's going to automatically populate this formula. So you don't need to worry about using those curly braces and everything. It will do that. It will take care of it. And then once we get the account, we are going to assign it to an account type as object variable, because again, we know that we can only expect one record of account from an opportunity because its account is the parent. If it was the other way around, we would choose as object collection variable. So I already have it created, so I'm saying account, that is an object of account type. And then you basically specify all the fields we need, right? Just like we did in the SOQL, all these fields that comes there. I hope that is clear. And now let's move to this part right here. I told you let's keep this for a while, because the reason I told you that is because we cannot do anything with this information until we actually create contract, all right? But even though I don't need it right now, what I want to do is get those values. So I'm just going to query those values and store it somewhere in a variable, okay? So I'm going to query the contact rows and store those contact IDs in a variable. Why? Because once I have the contact IDs in a list, I can use it later on, which is here once I'm done creating the contracts. So that's what I'm doing here. It has nothing to do with the contract creation. You can very well skip this step and go directly to contract creation if you don't want to create if you don't want to create contact roles. You don't need these steps right here. You can just go ahead and just go to directly the step. Okay, so let's see what's happening here in the loop, because I know that loop can get very confusing in a flow because you are not actually seeing the code for it. Okay, but let's see what's happening here. So basically, first step is pretty straightforward, and we are just querying the opportunity contact roles. And if you look up, there is an opportunity contact role object here. Okay, I didn't create this; it already exists by default. And then we are saying opportunity ID equals the ID, right? opp2i.id, or you could also use the ID which we passed from the class builder. It's the same thing. And then here comes the fun part, where we are using subject collection variable. Here, the reason we are using collection variable is because one opportunity could have multiple contact roles. So that's a contact role. Let me show you what type. So if I go to collection variable, object contact role, so its object type is not that one, opportunity contact role. That's the object type we are using. All right, so once we have that, what that means is, what it's doing is it's creating a list of opportunity contact roles. Okay, now once we have that list, as we all know, we use Stockwell for loop, so it's basically similar to what we do in Apex. So we are looping through opportunity contact role list. It doesn't really matter if you choose ascending or descending. I just leave it as ascending, and then we are creating a opcon role loop variable. What that means is, if let's say if you have a list of opportunity contact role opcon list something equal to, I'm not going to write the query here. I have a blog on this, and you can check it out there. But let's say what this means is, we're going to say opportunity, just copy paste this, contract role, and the loop variable is basically opcon role right here. So you can just write opcon role. I know this naming convention is not very good. What I encourage you to do is make it opcon var, opcon role var, or something like that, so you know that is the loop variable. And then dot, we are looping through this list which we just created, and the for loop. So now let's see what happens inside the for loop. And by the way, opcon loop variable is a type of subject variable. It has to be an subject variable because we are looping through an subject list. Okay, so that's an subject variable of type contact role. It has to be of same type also. Now the next one step is, we're actually assigning things. So what do we want actually? We want the contact ID. So let's create a list of IDs. So basically what we're doing is, we're creating a list of IDs, and we're calling it contact ID list or something. It's just a basic list. And once we're done creating the list, we just need to add it. You can see contact dot add, and this is the variable dot contact ID, because it has a field called contact ID, and that's what this is doing. Okay, if you want to look at contract role con ID variable type, contract role con ID should be, yeah, so it's a subject collection variable, not an subject but a regular connection variable. Trying to find it. All right, there you go. Contract or con ID. It's just a list of IDs of type text. Okay, so that's what I'm assigning it there. As you can see, it's an ID. ID is considered as text. And once we are done adding all these contact IDs to that list, we just go back. The loop is finished, and then you can see this double arrow comes something like this. So once you have, see, now it's one arrow, and then if you connect it back, don't get confused with double arrow. So it basically means that it's going back to the loop. And then we are done here. Basically, this is what we wanted to do just for to store contact ID so we can use it later on. Okay, so let's move on to our contact creation part, because that's our first requirement, right? So first of all, and for this purpose of this demo, I am not going to go through the decision element here. It basically means that we first check if the opportunity already has contact or not, right? Because we need to do that. So what we are doing is now we are going to look up contract, right? That meets this criteria, means the contract has an opportunity ID field. So we are saying opportunity equals opp.id. So if there is a contract that meets this criteria, assign that to this variable. So tell me what type of this, what type is this variable of? So yes, since opportunity contract is a one-to-many, you would assume that this should be a subject collection variable. Okay, so we need to choose a subject collection variable, or usually you can also choose a subject here in this particular case only, because we are only creating one contract here. You could either or choose any of those, but usually it's a best practice to choose a subject collection variable. And then we just get opportunity and ID. It doesn't really matter. Basically what we are doing here is just checking if the opportunity already has a contract or not. And then we have a decision element. So decision element, let's talk about that for a moment. Decision are very important because it is basically mimicking if-else statements. So they are helpful, really helpful, because they let you decide on various things. It could be, right now we are saying, is that object empty or not? So if it is null, and then you can use global constants like this. If you scroll down, there's a global constant, true or false. Usually, most of the cases I've seen, you mostly use true or false. Sometimes you might want to use add condition, some field value equals 1 or 0, anything. It could be anything. So basically what we do is we can have multiple outcomes for the decision. First one is contract is null. If I want to add another element, I can say contract. In this case, it doesn't make sense, but let's say I want to say opportunity amount. It's just an example. Amount is more than 40,000, 4,000, let's say. And then we are going to say, all right, a subject variables, oppty dot. I don't believe we have amount. See, even though it shows you the values here, if you didn't select it initially, your flow will not have any values. But for this purpose, I'm going to just select amount. I just want to show you how to use decision element. So repeater amount, I'm going to say greater than. You can directly enter numbers here, 4,000. So that's one thing, right? And you can add another outcome saying opportunity amount is maybe more than 8,000 or something. So as many as outcomes you create, those many branches you are going to get out of the decision element. So there will be one branch coming out, what to do if the opportunity is greater than 4,000. So you might have some operations, maybe sending an email alert to somebody. And then if opportunity amount is greater than 8,000, then maybe you want a checkbox to be checked based on your business use case. So that's how we add and make the cases here. So, but we don't want that here, so I'm just going to cancel it. So in our case, it's just contract is either null or not null. So what should we do if it is null? If it is null, we want to create the contracts, right? Because that's the whole point. Now, before creating contract, let's assign those values, right? Because so far we only have those account values, but we haven't assigned it to the contract, correct? So assignment is also an element. As the name suggests, it assigns values. So let's look through it. Now we already have a contract as object type, correct? Because we just created it. Or if you haven't created it, go ahead and create a subject variable type. So go ahead and create a subject variable of type contract. The reason we are doing this is because we don't want to create multiple values or variables, right? We can just create one a subject variable and we can assign all these fields to it. So saying oContract.accountID equals opp.accountID, contract the start date equals opp.close date, contract term, and I'm just, okay, so 12, that's a constant I'm using in the our flow. I'll show you how to create a constant as well, or it could be a formula. Status equal to draft, billing street. Now this gets interesting here. So here up to now we are selecting opportunity fields, and we can also select account fields, account or billing street, city, state. So as you can see, it's a process where we are assigning it. So right here, before actually creating it, we need to assign it, right? Assign it, and then we can create it. Now I hope that is clear. This assignment is pretty straightforward, and there are also different types of operators. There's add, and add is mostly used in a for loop where we want to add a value to a list. Anyways, let's go back to our fast create. So if you understand fast lookup, fast create is pretty straightforward to understand, and it's a very easy element. Basically, all you're doing is, if you have to name it obviously, and then all you need to do is just mention that variable, because this variable already has assigned the values because we just did it before in the statement, right? oContract dot account ID equals oAccount dot ID. So we just did that, and now all we need to do is just assign that variable, and it is going to take care of creation. Okay, so so we are done with the first step of this process, which was easier than what we're going to see next. I'm not telling you the next one is difficult, but let's keep moving on to the next one. Now we have the context created, basically the same. Now the reason I'm skipping this part is because it's going to do the same thing from here. The only difference is there is no wait element because the contract already exists. So the contract is not empty, and so if it is not empty and the contact roles are not there, so we just move the contact roles from opportunity to the contract. That's why I'm not showing this to you, because I wanted to show you the wait elements. Okay, so let's go to the wait element. After the creation of contract, we decided here that we want to wait the contract is get created. Then we get the contract ID, because we need two fields for the contact roles, contact roles, and those are, let me just write it here. So we have contact ID, because it's a contact role, and contract ID. So these two fields are needed in order to create contact roles. So unless that's created, we can't have contract ID. So that's kind of the point. So let's use a wait element. So that's going to be on your logic right here. Basically everything you need will be on your palette, and all the variables are stored in the Explorer. Okay, and the resources are how to create those variables. All right, wait. So wait is actually, it has way other more capabilities, but for this purpose we only need to wait for it until it creates the contract. It could do multiple stuff. Please refer to the documentation if you want to see what else it can do. So there could be three different event types. I'm choosing relative time because I don't know how long it can take to create contract. You could also use absolute time, but I'm choosing relative time to be sure, to be safe. And then record ID is contract.id because we are waiting for it. If you click on this, ID of the record with date time field value. So this record should have a date time value, which it does, the created date, and the base date of my logic is the created date. So after that created date, do this basically. And then object type is contract, obviously. And this is something I took a little bit time to figure this out because you just need to type the API name of the object. So keep that in mind, okay? And then that's it. Once you have done this, the flow will take care of it creating it, and then only firing this wait, right? So once you have done that, you will see that, and if you're trying to pull it and connect it to some other elements, you will get this name, contract creation, because that's the name of our wait element. Right here. So it can also have different events. So our first event is contract creation. If you add more events, like maybe you want to send something after there's another date field on the contract or something like that, okay? So you can add multiple events and multiple actions can take place based on those multiple events. So that's why there are multiple, but I don't need that here. So we just have one contract creation. Now, this is where it gets more interesting. Basically, we already have the contact IDs, correct? And what we want to do here is loop through those contact IDs. And so this was the it's not an S object, I'm sorry. It is a pure collection variable, just that text type of collection variable. And we're looping through it, and our loop variable is contact ID. Okay, so it's just a basic text type of variable. And once we loop through it, we need to assign it to the contact ID. So for that, now watch here. So this variable right here, what is that variable? First, what we're trying to create is contact role, right? So that variable is of type contact role, and dot contact ID equals contact ID. So we are basically assigning that. So if I go to that variable contract I haven't done a very good job here in naming them, but be sure you name them in a better way so it makes sense what variable is it coming from, because you don't always want to go to them in order to find, right? So let's contact role op ID. Not sure why I named it op ID, but so basically it's a type contact role, and we are taking the contact ID and assigning it to them. The reason we are taking as object variable, not as object collection variable, because we are still inside the loop, okay? So inside the loop, we are not assigning in the list. First we will assign, so it's basically going to loop and assign it to every time the contact ID, and the contract ID is coming from after the record is created, or contract.id, okay? So I assign that, and here is where we assign it to the list again. So contract control list is a variable of type contact role. It is a list variable, so that's why we have add. So we always use add with list variable, and then we add that as object variable, because after looping is done, every time it comes here, it adds to it. It keeps adding to it. right? That's here. And finally, end of the loop. So it goes back. So that's the loop. And then the end of the loop, we create our contract con row list after all the IDs, contract IDs and contact IDs are added here. So that's it. Let's see, we used fast lookup, fast create, we used wait element, decision element, assignment element, and most important, loop element in this tutorial. I hope it was clear and you understood. I know that if it is your first time doing a flow, it might get overwhelming. Please feel free to drop any questions you have, and I'll be happy to help. Also, I'll leave a link to my blog where I have also compared this part with an Apex code. Excuse me. So you should be able. It should be more clear if you go to the blog as well. And thank you for watching, and thank you for staying with me until now.